The quiet revolution, her fingers wrapped around the red band one more time. The same living room, the same worn carpet. But this morning, something in her chest felt lighter. She hadn't planned to start over, not again. Not after all the gym memberships that expired, the programs she quit halfway through, the mirrors she avoided. But here she was, alone with a piece of elastic resistance, wondering if simplicity could be the answer she'd been running from all along. Most of us believe transformation requires noise, equipment, a perfect plan. We think strength comes from complexity, that results demand suffering. But what if everything we've been told about building a lean, strong body has been backwards? This is the story of how one tool changed everything she thought she knew about progress, and why thousands are now discovering the same truth she did in that quiet room. She used to think real workouts happened in gyms, that resistance bands were for beginners or rehabilitation, not serious training. That if you wanted real results, you needed real weight, metal plates, barbells, the smell of iron and chalk. But 3 months earlier, something had broken. Not her body, though her lower back had been screaming for weeks. What broke was her belief that she could keep pushing through pain and call it discipline. The orthopedic surgeon had been direct. No heavy loads for at least 6 months, maybe longer. The words felt like a prison sentence. She drove home that day wondering if this was it. If her chance to feel strong again had passed. If she'd have to accept a body that was just ... less. What happened next changed everything. A friend mentioned resistance bands almost casually. Not as a solution, just as something she'd been using at home. No pressure, no promises. Just a quiet suggestion that planted itself in her mind and wouldn't leave. She ordered a set online, half convinced it was pointless. When the package arrived, she almost laughed. These thin strips of rubber were supposed to replace everything she'd lost. But desperation has a way of opening doors that ego keeps locked. The first workout was humbling. She'd expected it to feel easy, like a warm-up. Instead, her muscles burned in ways they never had under heavy weights. The constant tension, the way the resistance increased through every inch of movement, the complete control required to avoid snapping back, it was unlike anything she'd experienced. Her shoulders shook during simple chest presses. Her legs trembled through squats that looked effortless. And for the first time in months, there was no pain, just effort. Pure, clean effort. She thought she was done. Until that moment, researchers at the University of Wisconsin studied muscle activation patterns across different training modalities. What they found surprised the strength training community. Resistance bands, when used with proper technique and progressive tension, activated muscle fibers just as effectively as traditional weights. In some exercises, particularly for smaller stabilizing muscles, the activation was actually higher. The science made sense once she experienced it. Free weights rely on gravity. The resistance stays constant throughout the movement, but bands create accommodating resistance. The harder you pull, the harder they pull back. Your muscles never get a break, never hit a dead spot where momentum takes over. It's why her workouts now felt twice as long, even though they lasted 30 minutes. Part of her still doubted it could work. Could elastic really build the lean, defined physique she'd been chasing for years? Could something this simple, this portable, this inexpensive, deliver results that expensive equipment and expert trainers couldn't? The mirror started answering before her mind accepted it. Week 4, she noticed definition in her shoulders she'd never seen before. Small lines appeared around her deltoids, shadows that caught the light differently. Her arms looked tighter, more sculpted, even though the scale hadn't moved much. Week 7, her jeans fit differently, not looser, exactly better. Her glutes had lifted, her thighs had shape, her waist seemed to carve itself naturally from her hips. But the real change wasn't visible at all. She laughed, realizing progress didn't always look like progress. What transformed wasn't just her body, it was her relationship with movement itself. She'd spent years treating exercise like punishment, like debt she owed for eating, for existing, for not being perfect. Every workout was a battle against herself. Now, in her living room with nothing but bands and space, movement felt like conversation. Her body spoke through resistance, and she listened. When something hurt, she adjusted. When something felt weak, she supported it. When something grew stronger, she challenged it. There was no audience, no judgment, no comparison, just her, the bands, and honest effort. Maybe she'd been chasing the wrong goal all along. The blueprint she developed wasn't complicated. That was the point. Complexity had failed her. Simplicity was teaching her things she'd never learned in a decade of structured programs. She started every session with activation work. Light bands, high repetitions, focusing on shoulders and glutes. The small muscles that stabilize everything else. The ones she'd ignored while chasing bigger lifts. Just 5 minutes of band pull-aparts, lateral raises, and clamshells woke up her entire system. Then came the main work. She organized movements into patterns, not body parts. Push, pull, squat, hinge, carry. Each pattern got 1 or 2 exercises, 3 to 4 sets, 8 to 15 repetitions. The tension increased as she got stronger, either by using thicker bands or by stepping further from the anchor point. Push days included chest presses and overhead presses. Pull days featured rows and lot, pull-down. Squat days combined regular squats with split squats. Hinge days focused on Romanian deadlifts and glute bridges. And carry days, well, those were just loaded carries, holding bands under tension while walking, which burned her core in ways crunches never had. What surprised me most wasn't just how resistance bands improved my experience with home training, but how everything started to feel different once I switched to the right method. I wasn't expecting such a clear change in muscle engagement and recovery. And honestly, I tested different band tensions and anchor positions more than a few times before I figured out what really worked for my body type and goals. This isn't a promotion, just sharing real results that made a noticeable difference for me. I'll leave the link below if you want to explore what I mean. But what about progression? That was the question that haunted her at first. With weights, you add plates. With bands, what do you add? She learned there were more variables than she'd imagined. Band thickness, distance from anchor, body position, tempo, pause duration, unilateral versus bilateral, isometric holds. Each adjustment changed the stimulus completely. When regular squats became easy with a medium band, she didn't need a heavier band yet. She moved to single-leg squats. When chest presses felt light, she slowed down the eccentric phase, taking 4 seconds to return to the start. When rows stopped challenging her, she added a 3-second hold at peak contraction. Progressive overload wasn't about adding weight, it was about adding challenge, and challenge came in infinite forms. Then came the injury, and the real test. She rolled her ankle, stepping off a curb. Nothing dramatic, no hospital visit, just a sharp twist and immediate swelling. The kind of injury that derails everything, that serves as an excuse to stop, to slide back into old patterns. But she didn't have to drive to a gym she couldn't access. Didn't have to skip training entirely because she couldn't load a barbell, she just modified. Upper body work continued normally. Lower body work shifted to single-leg exercises on the uninjured side, maintaining strength and preventing atrophy through cross-education, the neurological phenomenon where training one limb preserves strength in the other. 2 weeks later, when the ankle healed, she hadn't lost momentum, hadn't lost confidence, hadn't lost the identity she was building as someone who showed up consistently, regardless of circumstances. That's when she understood the real power of this approach. Sometimes, we only understand strength when it's tested. Nutrition became simpler too. Though not in the way she expected. She'd spent years obsessing over macros, tracking every gram, feeling guilty about every deviation, but training at home, moving intuitively, listening to her body's actual signals, something shifted. She ate when hungry, stopped when satisfied, prioritized protein because her muscles asked for it, not because a calculator demanded it. She noticed she craved vegetables after hard workouts, that her body naturally balanced itself when she removed the noise of restriction and rules. This isn't medical advice, just her experience. But the research supports it. Studies from the Journal of Obesity found that intuitive eating, combined with regular resistance training, leads to better long-term adherence and body composition changes than rigid dietary protocols for many individuals. Her body found its natural equilibrium, not perfect, not magazine cover, just ... Hers lean where it wanted to be lean, strong where it needed to be strong, functional in ways that mattered for her life, not for someone else's standards. What would you do in that moment? When you realized the thing you've been chasing was never the thing you actually needed. The community found her before she found it. She'd posted a simple progress photo. Nothing dramatic, just a side-by-side showing subtle changes over 3 months. The comments flooded in from other people training at home, other people who'd discovered the same quiet revolution, parents who trained during nap time, professionals who squeezed in sessions before dawn calls, people with chronic pain who'd found movement they could sustain, travelers who carried their entire gym in a backpack, humans who'd been excluded from traditional fitness spaces and finally found belonging in their own living rooms. They shared modifications, encouraged struggles, celebrated tiny victories that would seem insignificant to outsiders but meant everything to those who understood. A single pull-up, 5 minutes without rest. The first time a movement stopped hurting and started flowing. This wasn't a program, it was a quiet revolution of people choosing sustainable over optimal, choosing present over perfect, choosing honest effort over impressive performance. She thought about quitting more than once. Not because it wasn't working, but because doubt has a way of whispering even when evidence proves it wrong. There were days the bands felt too light, too simple, too insufficient. Days she wondered if she was wasting time, if she should return to what looked more serious, more legitimate. Days the voice in her head said, real athletes don't train this way. But then she'd feel the difference in how she moved through her day, how she lifted her daughter without bracing for pain, how she stood taller without thinking about it, how she felt capable in her own skin, not despite her body, but because of it. The results were undeniable, even when the doubts were loud. Physical therapists are increasingly prescribing resistance band training for exactly these reasons. The variable resistance reduces joint stress while maintaining muscle tension. The portability increases adherence, the scalability allows for precise progression, and the versatility means almost any movement pattern can be trained effectively with proper setup and technique. This is educational information, not medical advice. But it's worth noting that what she discovered accidentally, professionals are now recommending intentionally. By month 5, her blueprint had refined itself into something elegant. For training days per week, upper push, upper pull, lower squat dominant, lower hinge dominant, 30 to 40 minutes each. Every exercise performed with complete focus on tension and control, not speed or repetition count. She'd learned that 3 excellent repetitions beat 10 sloppy ones. That rest between sets wasn't wasted time but necessary recovery. That progress happened in millimeters, not miles, and that millimeters accumulated into transformations you couldn't predict or force. Her warm-ups included mobility work she'd always skipped before. Hip circles, shoulder dislocations with a light band, thoracic rotations, just 5 minutes that made every exercise feel smoother, safer, more effective. Her cooldowns became sacred, not stretching, exactly. More like gratitude, lying on the floor, feeling her heartbeat slow, acknowledging what her body had done, what it continued to do, how it showed up even when her mind wanted to quit. She laughed, realizing progress didn't always look like progress. The costs told their own story. Her band set cost less than 2 months of gym membership, no commute, no waiting for equipment, no pressure to look a certain way or train a certain method, just investment in something she controlled completely. But the real savings weren't financial. They were temporal and psychological. She gained back hours every week, hours not spent driving, parking, changing, waiting, hours she now spent with people she loved, doing work that mattered, living a life that felt full rather than scheduled around fitness. And she saved the mental energy she'd been spending on comparison. Every gym session used to drain her socially, watching others lift heavier, look leaner, move better, wondering why her progress felt slower, her body less cooperative, her results less visible. Training alone eliminated the audience, and without the audience, she could finally hear herself. What surprised her most was the strength she built in movements that never looked impressive, carrying groceries up for flights of stairs without stopping, playing with her daughter for hours without fatigue, standing through long work presentations without back pain. These weren't gym victories, they were life victories, and they mattered more than any number on a barbell ever had. Functional strength, she learned, is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It just makes everything else easier. Then came the moment she didn't expect. She was demonstrating a row variation to a friend who'd asked about her transformation. As she pulled the band to her chest, held the contraction, controlled the release, her friend said something that stopped her. "You move differently now, like you trust yourself." Trust. That was it. That was the invisible thing that had changed beneath all the visible changes. She trusted her body to show up, to adapt, to heal, to grow stronger, not despite its limitations, but through honest acknowledgement of them. She trusted herself to keep promises she made in private, to value consistency over intensity, to measure progress by how she felt rather than how she looked. And that trust radiated outward into everything else. Part of her still couldn't believe elastic bands had taught her what years of expensive training couldn't, but the evidence lived in her body, in her daily experience, in the quiet confidence that had replaced the loud insecurity she'd carried for so long. Sometimes, we only understand strength when it's tested. The science community continues studying resistance band training with growing interest. Recent research from the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine found that 8 weeks of resistance band training produced similar increases in muscle thickness and strength as traditional weight training in both trained and untrained individuals. The key variable wasn't the tool, it was the consistent application of progressive tension over time. Other studies have explored the unique benefits of variable resistance. Because band tension increases through the range of motion, they may actually provide superior stimulus at the peak contraction point, where muscles are strongest and capable of handling more load. This accommodating resistance matches the strength curve of many movements more naturally than fixed resistance. This is educational information based on current research, not medical advice. But it helps explain why her subjective experience matched objective measurements. Her blueprint evolved into something she could teach. Not a rigid program, but a flexible framework anyone could adapt. The principles were simple enough to remember, specific enough to be effective. Start with movement quality. Master the basic patterns with light resistance. Feel the tension, control the tempo, eliminate momentum, build the foundation slowly, progress gradually, add challenge in small increments, more resistance, longer holds, slower negatives, unilateral variations. Let your body guide the pace. Train movements, not muscles. Think in patterns that transfer to real life. Push, pull, squat, hinge, carry. Cover the fundamental human movements every week. Respect, recovery. You don't build strength during workouts. You build it between workouts when your body repairs and adapts. Sleep, nutrition, and rest aren't optional. They're essential. Stay consistent over optimal. For decent sessions every week, beat 2 perfect sessions and 5 missed ones. Show up imperfectly rather than waiting for perfect conditions. And listen more than you plan. Your body knows more than any program. Pain is information. Fatigue is information. Energy is information. Learn to interpret the signals. When she looked in the mirror again, it wasn't her reflection that had changed. It was what she believed about herself. She saw someone capable, someone consistent, someone who'd proven that transformation doesn't require perfection or punishment or expensive solutions. Someone who discovered that the most powerful training tool isn't external at all. It's the decision to begin, and the commitment to continue. The bands were just elastic. The real resistance she'd overcome was internal. The doubt that she could do this alone. The belief that simple couldn't be effective. The fear that she'd fail again, quit again, disappoint herself again. But she hadn't. And that changed everything. Her daughter asked to try the bands last week. She's 6, still learning what strength means, still forming beliefs about her body and its capabilities. They did partner rows together, laughing when the band snapped back, celebrating when muscles burned, discovering together that hard things can also be joyful things. She wondered what her daughter would learn, not just about exercise, but about persistence, about self-trust, about finding your own path rather than following someone else's map. Maybe that's the real legacy of this quiet revolution, not the muscles built or the weight lost, but the belief passed down that you are capable of more than you think, in ways simpler than you've been told, with tools more accessible than you've been led to believe. The blueprint isn't complicated. The execution requires only honesty and consistency. The results emerge not dramatically but steadily, like sunrise, until one morning you wake up and realize you're living in a completely different light. She still trains in her living room, same worn carpet, same red band, but everything has changed, because she has changed. The external transformation reflected an internal one that no one else could see but everyone could feel. Strength, she learned, isn't about how much you can lift. It's about how consistently you show up, how honestly you listen, how gracefully you adapt, how patiently you persist. And it's always been available to you. You just needed permission to believe that simple could be powerful, that home could be enough, that you could be enough. Tell us which country or city you're watching from, and what part of this story resonated most with you. See you in the next video. Bye.